John. To begin my speech, I want to show you some amazing accomplishments by mankind. Please look at the screen. Here we have the Great Pyramids of Giza, built by hundreds of thousands of individual slaves. And here we have an American landing on the moon. Thousands of people and the nation united in achieving a seemingly impossible task. Now I want to show you two more grand accomplishments. Here we have the sand tar pits in Alberta, Canada. What you see on the screen is a before and after of an entire forest being removed to inefficiently squeeze crude oil out of the ground. This slide represents the Great Pacific Trash Vortex. Illustrated in gray is a huge area of the Pacific Ocean that's saturated with decomposing plastic waste. I'm trying to illustrate 2 points here. The first would be that a single group or a large group of single individuals can accomplish grand things on a grand scale. The other comparison would that be through our consumerism, everyone in this room has individually participated in making those second two sides happen. When I say consumerism, I'm referring to the amount and rate that we consume products and energy. In a survey I gave to this class, 50% of you were highly skeptical that our environment is in any sort of trouble. For the last 5 years, environmentalism has been a keen interest of mine. But through careful research and evaluation, I've been changing the way that my family and I consume. In a survey I gave to this class, 50% of you were highly skeptical that our environment is in any sort of trouble. Now, despite my earlier examples, I can understand the connection between the products we use and the effect on the environment is a hard one to illustrate or see. So let me ask you all a question. Who here does not have a cell phone? Anyone? No one does not have a cell phone. Author of the article, Electronic Waste May Be Hurting Our Environment, Ellen Shell points out the connection between the cell phones we use and the environmental price we pay to have them. She reports, in Kasubege National Park in the Congo, the mining of essential cell phone ingredient, coltan, has led to large areas of land being deforested. The resulting deforestation left the local gorilla population exposed to rebels who quickly began hunting them down and quickly reduced their numbers to 1/4 of what they used to be. For our convenience, we clear huge areas of forest and push an already endangered animal closer to the brink of extinction. Our wanton consumerism is seriously harming the environment, but if we change how we consume, we can put mankind on the path to sustainability and not destruction. Let me begin by illustrating the problem. In terms of the environment, our consumerism is seriously harmful, and our trash is a very telling indicator to that fact. Author Kim Evans reports an EPA statistic that in 1960, Americans used 88 million tons of trash, which amounts to about 2.6 pounds per person per day. In 2007, we went through 250 million tons of trash, and we increased our per person per day up to 4.6. Now, for comparison's sake, I make about a pound a day of trash. That's an amazing amount of stuff that we just eat, use, and then throw away. But what's more disturbing, as author of the book Ready, Set, Clean, Graham Hill points out, is that 90% of the products or the materials that are extracted to make these durable goods become waste almost immediately. Think of buying any food item or product. Before you even take a bite or use your product, you've already discarded some kind of container. This is what has become of the American dream. It's convenient, it's selfish, and it's very harmful to the environment. Only 1/3 of our trash gets recycled. The remaining 2/3 gets burned, producing CO2, or buried, leaking toxic substances into the ground, and methane gas into the air. And methane gas and CO2 are very important because they're extremely potent greenhouse gases, making our waste a serious contributor to global warming. But our trash isn't where much of the destruction to the environment happens. It's the product producing and refining those materials into products to where the real destruction begins. And our desire for wood and paper products is an excellent example of this. The UNEP.org reports that over the last 300 years, we have reduced the global forest by 40%. And they go on to state that 20% of all greenhouse gas emissions are from deforestation. If that wasn't bad enough, taking these trees and refining them to our notebooks and our coffee cups is extremely energy intensive, produces a number of toxins, as well as tons and tons of waste. But you know what? I want to show you an example of a more destructive process. Director, switch to the screen. This is a picture of an entire mountain being removed somewhere in the Ohio River Valley. This type of mining, known as mountaintop removal, is used as a cheap way to extract materials like coal, phosphate, and even clay for cat litter. And as you can see, it's an extremely destructive process. Author Silas House reports from her article, My Polluted Kentucky Home. She states that since mountaintop removal was first used in 1970, it has destroyed some 500 mountains and poisoned 1,900 miles of rivers and streams just in the Appalachian coal mining region. And she goes on to state that inhabitants surrounding these mountains bathe their children in water that has arsenic levels as high as 130 times what the EPA deems safe to drink. In an effort to bring ourselves dirty energy and cheap products, we regularly poison ourselves. So you might ask, where does all this consumerism lead us? We have to understand the increasing rate and constant drain on our finite resources and our renewable resources cannot possibly sustain us all forever. That the global consumerism-based economy is inching mankind closer and closer to finding ourselves on the endangered species list. Now, I understand that all these statistics and predictions are hard to visualize, so I want to show you one final example. Again, to the screen. This is the tiny island of Rapa Nui, approximately 2,000 miles off the coast of Chile. You would all better know it as Easter Island, or the island with those big funny heads on it. It's a well-documented example of the devastating effects of overconsumption. Long ago, this island once held a lush tropical forest, but as the natives there began to thrive, they quickly deforested the entire island. While they did struggle to adapt, the island could no longer sustain their number of 15,000, and they quickly died off, reducing them to a mere 2,000. This is a grim foreshadowing of what can happen to the rest of us once we consume through our global environment. Hopefully now you have some idea of the problem, so let's talk about solutions. Of all the possible solutions to reducing the damage to the environment that our consumerism causes, we should focus on how we all personally consume. Being happy with less, reducing what we use, and recycling what materials can be recycled sends a far more social message than the cleanest energy and the most renewable resource. All of you here may not realize it, but we represent the next generation of Americans capable to effect change. But with that privilege comes responsibilities. We all have power to set standards, to live a dream that we know is worth living. You'll only have to ask yourself and be able to examine yourself on how you live. So I ask you, do you really need to replace your iPhone 3 with an iPhone 4? Are you really going to buy a new notebook when half of your old notebook is unused? And are you really going to buy a new bottle of water when you could just as easily refill the one you have? Being a responsible consumer can be tricky, but you just have to be sensible and know what questions to ask. Now, there's so many great ways to make a difference, and I have just a few suggestions to help you all start thinking. Reduce what you use. As author Graham Hill points out, that if you cut your beef intake by 1/4, you'll reduce your CO2 footprint by 250 pounds a year. Become a vegetarian, and you'll cut that figure up to 3,000 pounds. Reuse what you have. As I already said, water bottles are a great example of that. You could refill the ones you have or buy aluminum refillable ones. As author Jacqueline Lynn points out from her article, bottled water may be harmful, You could be paying 0.2 cents for filtered tap water instead of $3.79 for imported bottled water that isn't even regulated and oftentimes isn't any safer than your local community water. Recycle what you can. Sam Martin points out that the paper recycling industry saves 17 trees for every ton of paper it keeps out of the landfill. And in 1996, it recovered 42.3 million tons of paper, saving about 719 million trees. Now, as I said, being a responsible consumer is tricky. There's no straight, easy answers. But just that you're willing to ponder the question is really key. To help you get on the track, I have some handouts from the article. People should spend ethically to minimize the effects of their consumption, with more great ways that you can better your environment by changing how you consume. Before I conclude my speech, I want to make one point absolutely crystal clear. Your value to the environment cannot be quantified in terms of how many bottles you save from a landfill. No. Your real value, the one that will make a difference, is by the influence you in turn have on your friends, your families, and your communities. Every one of you decides to better your environment by making a small change in the way that you consume will send a message to the fabric of our society that our path is one of sustainability and not destruction. I'm a firm believer that every mistake we make is an opportunity to better who we are. In 100 or 1,000 years, we won't be judged on if we accomplished our goals, but how we chose to live our lives. Do not let this mistake go to waste. So go forth and make a difference. And thank you all for your time.
We have 3 5s.
Guys don't want to read them, please give them to your families or recycle them.
The device that you had on your hip, was that Amanda's? I see. George, what do you say? Will you continue to be a collector?
You know, my favorite part of the handout is that little recycle green bag.
I like that too.
What?
I love the little recycle green bag. That's my
Yeah.
favorite part of the handout.
Little sass.
Where's that show?
Keep you interested in the trees.
It's right here. It's really cool.
Oh, I see it. I see it.
It's got all the recycle symbols on it.
Where are the recycles?
See, they're not leaves, they're arrows.
Oh, I see.